Breaking news. Former President Joe Biden has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer.
He had increasingly more and more urinary problems.
Which led to doctors discovering a tumor in his prostate.
He was diagnosed Friday. The cancer has also spread to his bones.
Which usually means that it is incurable at this point. It is quite advanced.
However, his doctors remain hopeful because his cancer appears to be hormone sensitive, allowing for more effective treatment.
It's been about a week since former President Joe Biden announced his prostate cancer diagnosis. Prostate cancer is the second deadliest cancer for men in the U.S. and is incredibly common. Boston Globe's own Mark Shanahan knows that all too well. He was also diagnosed with it back in 2013 when he was 48 years old. His experience, from diagnosis to cancer-free, was the subject of a Boston Globe podcast released in 2020 called Mr. 80%. Mark's been processing the Joe Biden news all week. The fact that it had already metastasized was the most alarming detail.
That's a seriously aggressive form of prostate cancer when it gets into your bones. Once it gets into your bones, prostate cancer is super painful. So that's the bummer for Joe Biden, and also that, you can only play defense at that point. Yeah, there's no curing Joe Biden at this point.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I sat down with Mark to talk about the Joe Biden news and learn more about his experience with the disease. And I learned maybe more than I ever wanted to. But on behalf of all of my loved ones with prostates, I'm glad that I did. I'm Jazmin Aguilera, and this is The Globe. Welcome to the podcast, Mark.
Thanks very much.
So, for somebody who has no idea what prostate cancer is and how it happens, what is it?
Well, it's an extraordinarily common cancer that affects men, usually men of a certain age. It's a very slow-growing, often benign, but extraordinarily common cancer that is extremely hereditary as well.
So the reason this is coming up again right now is
Yes.
because of Joe Biden's diagnosis.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, where were you when you heard about it, and what were your immediate thoughts?
It's weird because I got some texts from people saying, hope you're doing okay. And I don't know if this is triggering or whatever. And the truth is that prostate cancer is so common that it wasn't for me. I mean, the truth is that it's so common that you either die with prostate cancer or you die from prostate cancer if you're a man. That is just the truth of it.
So you weren't triggered when you saw the news. The reason that we're looking back at your podcast is this idea that, it's so common and yet nobody talks about it.
Correct.
Are you a fan of Veep? Have you seen Veep?
Sure.
Do you know that scene, VP Doyle from that show, when they're like, you got to leave, but it's got to be something embarrassing?
It's a matter of principle.
There is no way you can get out on a matter of principle.
That's right.
It has to be a health issue.
Oh, I'm perfectly healthy.
You got prostate problems.
I'm not gonna say that. That's embarrassing.
Exactly. That's what makes it more real. We'll write a draft. Come on.
Yeah. Prostate, not principle, huh?
Yeah, that's what we'll go with that.
That's so funny.
What did you think about that scene, and did that cross your mind?
It did. What makes Veep funny is that it's satire that is kind of mean, and I enjoy that. But I also think that prostate cancer is, I don't know. There are so many, Joe Biden's defense secretary, Lloyd Austin. He was hospitalized, and there was that whole flurry of stories about how come we didn't know, and what he wasn't on the job, and where was he? Well, he had prostate cancer, and he was being treated for prostate cancer. And the reason that we weren't told is because it was prostate cancer. If it was something else, it wouldn't have been an issue. That's crazy.
Yeah. Because like you said, breast cancer isn't shameful. Ovarian cancer isn't shameful.
Correct. But women are just so much better at
I agree.
A kind of right. Just you can stop the tape there.
Stop right there. Period.
No, but they were emboldened. I don't think it was always true, but I think that Betty Ford, Eleanor Roosevelt, there have been women in history who have sort of shown the way. Whereas in the case of men, it's like,
They're at the mercy of fart jokes and
correct. Well, and also just like the sort of the Marlboro Man.
yeah.
And this kind of like cliched image of masculinity. But I have always thought that it's a little weird to me that there's something about this disease that strikes me as actually interesting. It's just because it does involve a sexual function. For instance, you probably don't know, I didn't know what the prostate actually does.
What does it do?
It produces semen. So if you remove your prostate, you no longer produce ejaculant. In other words, you still, and this is probably not going to go in the podcast.
Well, hey, this is medical information right now.
It's true. And it's the source of a few solid jokes in the story and in the podcast that you still have an orgasm. Okay. And that's the way the podcast begins, is that, when you have an orgasm, there's like a dowel or a stick that comes out and a flag unfurls and says bang. And so I didn't know anything about it, even though my own father had had prostate cancer and been treated for prostate cancer. It's just one of those things that you associate with old people. And so when I was 45 or 46, I took a blood test that is the most common way of diagnosing prostate cancer. And my PSA, which is a marker that often signals a problem, was high. But one reading of a PSA is not sufficient. And so my doctor wasn't immediately concerned. But he said, why don't you come back in 3 months or 6 months and we'll take it again and again and again. And that's what I did. And ultimately, 2.5 years later, I was sent off to get a biopsy. So I did that, and then I was diagnosed. So typically what they tell men is that you should begin checking your PSA at 50. And I checked my PSA for the first time at 45, precisely because my father had it. Once you go down the road of treatment options, which are like 10,000% better than they used to be, but they're still not great. And then I got surgery 7 days later, and they had gotten most of it, but they hadn't gotten all of it. So I had to have hormone therapy, which is a whole section of the podcast, because basically the hormones shut down your pituitary gland, which produces testosterone. So I became like a little old lady. I became like seriously a little menopausal man. There was one epic episode where I could feel myself like just flying into a rage. And I just knew it. I was going to go crazy. And it was petty. It was so stupid.
So you went into a rage from lack of testosterone?
Correct. That's exactly right. That I just became sort of this moody, quick to anger, irrational, incredible hot flashes that I was actually able to address with acupuncture. Cured it.
Whoa.
Yeah, cured it immediately. So my wife, she started to do that as well with the hot flashes that she was getting.
Huh. So how long have you been cancer-free?
Well, I don't like to say cured. I don't say that. This all went down when I was 48, and I'm 59 now. And it was a really long 1.5 years because in addition to the hormone therapy, I had radiation as well afterward. It was super unpleasant. And the reason that you do that is because prostate cancer feeds on testosterone, and that's why they remove testosterone from your body. After about 6 months, then they radiate, because removing testosterone will kill some of the prostate cancer, but it will at least weaken all of the prostate cancer. And then they go in and they hammer away with radiation. Anyway, so it was 10 years ago, and now I go once a year to Dana-Farber, and I'm fine.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Negligible. I have negligible.
Did you get a prostate prostatectomy?
Yes.
Okay, so there's no chance you can get it again.
Well, so no. If it was, I don't want to say anything. So
Knock on wood here.
Yeah, correct.
So my second overture question here is there's some kind of wisdom that people get when they have to go through something incredibly hard that's also incredibly corporal.
Mm-hmm.
You just connect with a different part of your psyche when you have to really focus on your body.
Yeah.
Did you go through that?
I think I did. I mean, I think after I'd been through this whole thing, surgery, radiation, hormone therapy, I experienced this kind of like, it was like a flutter. It felt like a tremor somewhere in my body, and I couldn't identify it. And it wasn't uncomfortable, but it felt like there was something
inside of you
alive, something like that was reacting, something that was. So I went to various people, multiple rectal exams. I'd had biopsies, I'd had this and that. And they said, listen, you've had a lot of activity in your pelvic floor. And I didn't even know really what a pelvic floor was or is or where. And they said, I think that what you have is basically what amounts to a Charlie horse. And you basically need to massage it. You need to massage the muscle. And so I said, well, I don't know how I would do that.
You should get a Theragun and do some weird positions, I guess.
Well, I went to a physical therapist who specializes in pelvic floor manipulation. So I didn't know.
That sounds like something sketchy on Craigslist.
Super sketchy. Beyond. She was so nice. She was like this middle-aged woman who lived in Charlestown, and her job, she'd gone to school, was basically to massage your pelvic floor. Well, there's really only one way to massage your pelvic floor. There's only one way to your pelvic floor.
One road.
Correct. And it was incredible. It was relief. It was almost like, it wasn't exactly like scratching an itch. And there was no pleasure per se. That's not what it was. It was just like
a massage.
Correct.
Yeah.
It was like a massage. And we did this over the course of 3 sessions, and I've never.
Do you miss it?
No. No. I mean, I guess, by the third time, you have to make conversation.
Oh my God.
And so we talked about her new condo. We talked about like the gentrification, and I was like, it was fine. And so when you say, do I miss it? I kind of miss her. I kind of miss that conversation and the fact that we were able to do that. So
maybe you were more open because you were so vulnerable.
Correct. No, I definitely, I had no choice. I had absolutely no choice.
God.
There's no part of me that, wishes to return. I did get something out of it. I did write something and record something that I think is, helpful to people, that tells a funny, true story. I just felt as though, if I could figure out a way to tell this story, because this is all like real. It's all real. I just felt as though people would be interested. And I do think that, like, you're right, that the Joe Biden thing does sort of focus people's attention on it. And the truth also is that people ought to be paying attention.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Sure.
Everyone should check out Mr. 80%. After this, you'll hear the first episode. We hope you enjoy it. And if you want to keep listening to the rest of the episodes, check out Mr. 80% on Globe.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
What do you know about the job of the prostate? What it does?
I don't know a goddamn thing about it.
So you have no idea what its function is. If I told you that it creates ejaculant, its whole job is to make ejaculant.
I had no idea.
So if I told you that I had my prostate removed, what do you think then happens?
That you don't ejaculate anymore?
That means that I have an orgasm, and the sensation is,
But nothing comes out?
Well, there's a little stick and a flag unfurls and it says bang. From the Boston Globe and PRX, this is Mr. 80%. a podcast about living, dying, and being a man, even if it's not the same man you used to be. I'm Mark Shanahan. Before we begin, a quick note on gender. Prostate cancer doesn't care how you identify. If you have a prostate, this podcast is for you. And if you love someone who has a prostate, this podcast is also for you. Because when this disease strikes, as you'll hear, it's a family affair. Episode 1, 12 Uneasy Pieces. When I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, I didn't know anything. I knew my dad had it, but he was old. He was my dad. I was only 47. I discovered age doesn't matter. Prostate cancer is absurdly common. About 200,000 men in the U.S. are diagnosed with it every year, and 30,000 die from it. If you're African American, the numbers are even worse. Prostate cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death among American men. Look, if you're over 70 in America and you don't have prostate cancer, you're probably a woman. So why doesn't anyone want to talk about it?
We're all very reticent about our bottoms. It has to be faced.
That's Stephen Fry, the great actor, comedian, author, and prostate cancer survivor. He's an evangelist for talking about it.
We're as tightly sealed, if I can put it that way, as we've ever been since Genesis. Since we were expelled from Eden, we still have this, the good French word is pudeur, this shame.
He's right. You want to know what douses sparkling dinner party conversation faster than a mention of prostate cancer? Not much.
There are so many things that a human being should be ashamed of. Cruelty, lies, deceit, duplicity, betrayal, abuse, and so on. All the things we do wrong. But having a bottom and genitals and all that goes and pertains thereto is not something of which we should ever be ashamed and for which we should ever apologize. Like mushrooms, these things thrive in the dark. And the more light you cast on anything to do with the genitourinary area, the more chance people have of forestalling any disasters.
Early in 2018, Fry posted a video on YouTube announcing to the world that he had prostate cancer.
Now, what is a prostate? You may well wonder, and I'm still not that certain myself. It's not an organ so much as a gland, I believe. And it sits between a man, because only men have them, a man's bladder and his old fella, his todger, I suppose.
When I came across Fry's video, I was charmed and surprised. If this eminent English gentleman could be so frank about his old feather, his todger, and its anatomical function, surely a hack like me could too.
I'm Anthony Jazmin. I'm a professor of radiation oncology here at the Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School, and I've been here for over 30 years.
Dr. Jazmin's my radiation oncologist. He's a superstar in his field. He's funny. I believe the Brits say droll. And he's upfront. He told me the truth, no matter how unpleasant. Dr. Jazmin says Fry's candor upends decades of tradition. The tradition of saying nothing.
Certainly men who were raised during the Second World War, came of age in the 1950s, would keep down there, sort of quiet. It just wasn't a subject for discussion, not in nice society. And you certainly didn't share your experience with your buddies, you didn't share it with women, and you weren't going to march on the streets advocating on your own behalf.
But silence equals ignorance, and ignorance can kill.
Prostate cancer was always I won't call it an orphan disease, but it was always well behind breast cancer. Women marched on Washington, D.C., raised the profile of breast cancer in the eyes of Capitol Hill, arranged funding, and men were just late to the game.
Think about it. Frank Zappa died at 52, Johnny Ramone at 55, Langston Hughes was 65. All of them died from prostate cancer. If our culture were different, less, uptight, could they have been saved? Could their stories have saved others? Stephen Fry is certainly trying. His YouTube video was a revelation. Rarely had anyone been so public about their prostate cancer, let alone someone like Fry with 12 million Twitter followers. The video went viral, and the effect was dramatic. Britain's National Health Service reported a massive spike in diagnoses of the disease. Not because prostate cancer was suddenly more prevalent, but because so many more men got their PSA checked. I'll pause here to say, if you're a guy of a certain age and you don't know what PSA stands for, you need to pay more attention.
Now, I don't know if you know what PSA levels are. I hope you do. If you're a man, you certainly should do. It stands for prostate-specific antigen.
It used to be we relied on digital rectal exams to find prostate cancer. Doctors would snap on a rubber glove, make a bit of chit-chat, and then, oof, tunnel a well-lubricated finger into your rectum. If you can't remember whether you've had a digital rectal exam, you haven't. But you still know what it is.
All right, Mr. Griffin, I'm just going to need you to drop your pants and we'll check your prostate.
So how's this work? You just feel my pulse? Or
In the early 90s, after studies linked prostate cancer to an elevated PSA, doctors began using a simple blood test to screen men for the disease. But know this about your PSA. It's one data point. It's not the whole story. An elevated PSA means you need to watch it. It doesn't mean necessarily you need treatment, at least right away. We know this now. Back in medieval times, like the 80s, we didn't.
We used the word cancer. Cancer led to treatment. That was treatment in the 80s and 90s at the time when the radical prostatectomy was, I hate to use the word barbaric, but I'm going to use the word barbaric, and radiation was crude.
Before 1982, for reasons we'll explore in a later episode, every guy who had his prostate removed was left impotent. Every single guy. So this disease, prostate cancer, it can kill you. It can render you impotent. It can land you in diapers. And yet most guys know absolutely nothing about the prostate. Like, where is it? Let me just say, JetBlue does not fly direct. It's in there. Is it bigger than a bread box?
It's interesting that you mentioned size. It is about the size of a walnut.
That's Mark Pomerantz. He's a medical oncologist at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston. He's brainy, basketball tall, and a leading expert in the genetics of prostate cancer. He's my doctor. What he says about the incidence of this disease is pretty stark.
If we took 100 guys your age off the street and magically took out their prostates, chopped it up, looked under the microscope, we'd find prostate cancer in a majority of them.
Do most men understand what is going on when they're diagnosed and that the twin evils of incontinence and erectile dysfunction are kind of like facts on the ground?
The short answer is no, men are not adequately informed about what they're about to walk into.
I'll say.
How much of your personal story are you making public? Okay.
Everything. Okay. Everything. Even a guy who studies this disease for a living acknowledges there's a lot we don't know about it.
There are still many mysteries surrounding the prostate gland. It is located in a very busy neighborhood just below the bladder. The prostate is responsible for generating many of the important fluids and ingredients that go into the semen that help the sperm reach its target.
In other words, and in the delicate prose of WebMD, the prostate produces the fluid that, quote, nourishes and protects sperm. It makes ejaculate. This is where my expertise comes in. We'll be right back. Since we're sharing, I had my first orgasm in the 7th grade, barely 5 minutes after I found a magazine in my brother's closet with soft focus photos of a curvy Sophia Loren lookalike. Ever since, I gotta say, ejaculation, it's been a friend of mine. Not that I ever thanked my prostate. I'll bet my best friends never thanked theirs either. They don't even know what the prostate is. How do I know? Because I asked them. Every summer we spend a week together on Cape Cod. Last time, I got some of them on tape. If I ask you where the prostate is located, what do you say?
Up my butt, and maybe, I don't know precisely, but like, you know.
Up your butt.
Well, not yours, but
right.
You asked where mine was.
Yeah. Oh, wait. So what do you know about what do you know about what the prostate does?
I really know nothing about what it does, honestly.
So here's the question: what do you know about what the prostate is?
What do I know about the prostate?
What's the function?
Yeah, what is the function?
What does it do? What is the function of the prostate?
Okay, so you're not going to use my name, right?
With apologies to Prince, dig, if you will, this picture. I'm lying on my side in a windowless hospital room. My bare ass is exposed. I'm clutching my wife's hand. Michelle doesn't have to be here. It's not required that your partner watch as you get your prostate biopsied, but I'm really glad she is. My cotton Johnny is soaked with sweat, and the procedure hasn't even started. It's October 2013. Until now, I'm a guy with a pretty decent life. We have 2 incredible kids. Our son Beckett is 9, hilarious, handsome, and he still puts his arm around me in the Stop and Shop. Julia's 13. Like her brother, she's funny. She's also smart, incisive, and a big reader like her mom. She's not, as the parenting books predicted, an unrecognizable me-nager. Michelle and I, after focusing so much of our attention on the children, are finally enjoying each other again, if you know what I mean. We both have jobs we love. Michelle's a social worker. She's unflappable and selfless. I'm an entertainment writer for the Boston Globe, which means I drink a lot of mediocre Chardonnay at parties and interview Mac Wahlberg about his new movie. But lying here in the hospital room, I'm a long way from all that. Something resembling your grandmother's longest knitting needle is being inserted way up my rectum. Over my shoulder, a machine makes a terrible clapping sound each time it snips a tiny piece of my prostate. 12 terrible claps. And yet I still manage to make Michelle smile.
I remember that I was watching to see how you interact with doctors, and you are your same selves. You're cracking jokes, you're making everybody laugh.
We'd been watching my PSA for a while because of my family history. My father was 70 when he was treated. My PSA was slightly elevated, which can mean cancer, or not. Lots of things can raise your PSA. Riding a bike can. Having sex can. I don't own a bike, but my wife and I, we were back in the saddle. Honestly, though, before the biopsy, I wasn't all that worried. Prostate cancer is something old guys get. The average age at diagnosis is 66. I was 20 years younger. My mother used to call me Peter Pan. I don't remember Peter Pan having issues with his prostate. 6 days after my biopsy, I was in traffic, driving inches per hour on my way home from work. My commute could not have been any worse. Then my cell phone rang. One of the big takeaways from this whole experience is if you get a call from a restricted number on your cell phone, bad news. Yeah. It's very bad news. I got another call from... I'm recalling the moment with the guy who was on the other end of the line that gray fall evening. My primary care doctor, James Morrill. But can you talk to me about as you pick up the phone to make that call? Yeah. What's that like?
It feels hard because you know that you're going to change somebody's immediate plans and you're going to change potentially somebody's life in some way with those words. And we don't think enough about how it feels on the other end.
Dr. Morrill is all the good doctor things. He's empathetic and easy to talk to. If you have to find out you're sick, you could do a lot worse than have Dr. Morrill break the news. I thought I was going to die. I mean, somebody tells you that, you have cancer. You know, I was young and I had 2 small children And this was very, very upsetting. I'm thinking about, oh my God, I've got to get my affairs in order.
I'm not sure I was fully aware of that, Mark. That's part of why you can't rush that conversation, is because part of what you do have to do is assess how the person you're talking to is reacting right then and there.
I'm not suggesting that you did anything wrong. I just am saying that, and you're right, I then did take a breath, go home, have a bourbon, talk to my wife. So we were able to then start on the road of, what do we need to do and how do we need to do it and who are the people we need to talk to. So that was fine. There were lots of people we needed to talk to. People I didn't even know existed before that day. Specialists who'd guide me through my new life with cancer. But first, I had to tell my kids.
I think I just took it to like if he actually died, I would basically lose my best friend.
This is my daughter, Julia. She's in college now.
They say, we're not your best friend, we're your parent. But, he's my best friend.
Having cancer means you get a preview of what your kid might say at your funeral.
You're the funniest person I've ever met. I think you're one of the most supportive and hardworking people I've ever met. And I also think you're one of the most intense people I've ever met. And you've really taught me, if you're going to do something, you have to do it 100%.
It's true. I did teach her that.
You have a very impressive career. And so I always, looked up to that.
And by impressive, you mean I have talked to BJ Novak.
Yeah, and you took me to a Taylor Swift concert where she gave me her bracelet.
Right.
So.
It's not a good day when you have to tell your children that you have a condition that could quite possibly take you from them. It sucks for you, but not like it sucks for them. And I wish I'd realized that at the time.
This was the most personal conversation we had ever had. And I sat there very silently, sort of holding back. I wanted to be, in my head, I was just you need to act very mature, very strong. But then the most jarring part was that I literally had to go, I had math homework. I literally had math homework due tomorrow. And I was like, this is the most normal thing. I just went and did the most normal thing. And I was like, how am I supposed to do this when I know this information that is so much more important and so much more valuable in the long run, ultimately? And you had told me you hadn't told Beckett yet.
Now, I should tell you that fearing that he might be forced to say the word penis into a hot microphone, my son Beckett did not want to go on the record for this podcast. He's a teenage boy. I get it. Julia, she was 13 when I was diagnosed. She wrote an entire essay about the day I sat her down on our corduroy sofa and told her I was sick. Here's a little bit.
You told me that you had cancer, and I just sat there looking at the frayed fabric of my backpack, wishing you hadn't said those words, and wishing you had told me anything else, any other horrible thing, just not that. Our house became the glass house, and you and me and Mom and Beck were small china bowls so delicate they could shatter at even the slightest touch.
Turns out Julia read the essay for her high school English class. At the time, I didn't even know she'd written it.
At the end of the vignette, I say that we were sort of in a glass house, but maybe that's not the right choice of words, because glass house implies that people can see everything that's going on, and they couldn't.
They couldn't see a lot of things. And talking to Julia 5 years later, I see what I missed at the time, too. Like how worried she was, and how much she gave up.
When you have to stay home and babysit your brother, and then you see on Instagram or Snapchat that your friends went out for lunch or for dinner or to the movies, it can be a little bit hard because obviously you feel like you're missing out on something, and then you're missing out on memories or the chance to get closer with certain people. And
this is the thing about cancer. One person in a family gets it, but everyone's life changes.
And Mom would make these yogurt, granola, honey, fruit parfaits, and she would rub your feet, and it just became this nightly routine that would sort of calm you down and like help her sort of feel like she had control over a situation that most times was completely out of her hands. Mom was a trooper.
See? Kids know everything, even their dad's biggest fears.
I was thinking, like, is he going to lose his hair?
That's hilarious. And I also was thinking about that, by the way. Next time on Mr. 80%, let's talk about sex, baby.
Do you remember what my scrotum looked like? You know what a scrotum is.
I think they have a deep castration anxiety, and that's part of being a male. I can do a heart exam, but I can't check your prostate. What is that? What is the matter with us?
Mr. 80% is a production of the Boston Globe and PRX. Kelly Horn wrote and produced the show with me and Scott Hellman, our executive producer. Audio mixing, sound design, and mastering by Tim Skog. Brian McGrory is our executive editor. Our music is from APN. Thanks to David Porter at Mix One Studios in Boston and Natasha Redhead at Wise Buddha Studios in London for recording our interview with Stephen Fry. One quick disclaimer before we go. I'm not a doctor, not even close. So nothing in Mr. 80% should be construed as medical advice. If you have questions about your prostate, don't call me, call your doctor. For more about the show, visit bostonglobe.com/prostate. There's additional information about prostate cancer, meet some of the people from the episodes, and read a magazine essay I wrote about my odyssey. And if you like the show, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I'm Mark Shanahan. Thanks for listening. And these are not Audrey Hepburn's feet we're talking about. I mean,
No. She had creams and oils and clippers.
Yeah, and these were like fucking right. And I have like donkey's feet.
Yeah.
Mark Shanahan is the host of Mr. 80%. Part memoir, part investigation, part funny story. Mark will take you through his journey with prostate cancer. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts.